Welcome to the Economic and Finance Standing Policy Committee for Thursday, June the 13th. And we will start, if we can, Madam City Clerk, with a roll call.
Thank you, Mayor Higgin. Councillor Croson. Oh, she's not here. Okay. Councillor Dodick is not here. Councillor Middleton Hope.
Present.
Councillor Palladino.
Present.
Councillor Parker, not here right now, but he is here. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, or Vice Chair, I guess. Here. Thank you. Acting Mayor Campbell.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Carlson. Councillor Parker.
Here.
Councillor Croson.
Here.
Awesome. And Mayor Higgin.
Present.
Thank you.
The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we're gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationships to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. I have a resolution here from Councillor Palladino, adoption of agenda. Be it resolved that the June 13th, 2024 agenda of the Economic and Finance Standing Policy Committee meeting be adopted as presented. Madam City Clerk, are there any changes?
Thank you, Mayor Higgin. There are no amendments or revisions to today's agenda.
All right, Councillor Palladino.
If there are no revisions, I will call for the vote.
Questions have been called. All in favor? And that is unanimous. And from Acting Mayor Campbell, consent agenda, be it resolved that the minutes of the Economic Standing Policy Committee meeting held on May 7th, 2024 be approved as revised, and the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign the same. Further be resolved that the status of initiatives for June 13th, 2024 be received as information, and further be resolved that the Economic and Finance Standing Policy Committee defer the return of the Lethbridge Fire and EMS supervisors positions from Q2 2024 to a future meeting of the Economic and Finance Standing Policy Committee. Acting Mayor Campbell.
Are there any questions from my colleagues or any concerns? I see Councillor Middleton Hope.
Just let me read. Lips are moving.
All good. Call for the vote.
Questions been called. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you. All right, we have a presentation here, and I see that Christine Lee. Thank you very much, Trustee Lee. You've come to the mic, and we don't have to state your name. I think we've done it already, but the floor is yours. Thank you for coming.
And members of administration, it is my pleasure today to bring you an opportunity to enhance some community space in North Lethbridge. So as you are well aware, we have a long-standing joint use agreement that's been in effect since 1959, and it is a model for other agreements in the province of Alberta. And that agreement has provided mutual benefit to not only our children and our school boards, but also to our members of our communities through access to our schools for recreational uses. And the city has most generously contributed to a number of projects in Lethbridge School Division to upsize gymnasiums such as Colbanks, Dr. Plaxton, and our course currently under construction, our new West Cooley Station Elementary School. And so really we're using an economical use of taxpayers' funds. I'd like to point to two of your studies, the Recreation and Culture Master Plan and the Indoor Court Multi-Space Use Analysis Report, that has recommended that there's still a need for community spaces in Lethbridge, and that the city should consider any opportunities they can partner to increase those spaces. So here's the opportunity. We are very fortunate that after 18 years of requesting the province of Alberta, they are committed to modernizing our oldest school that is 113 years old, Galbraith Elementary School. And we're very excited about that. And we are now been put into the design phase, which is the next phase to approval of construction. And part of that design, we've now recently learned that they will give us a new gymnasium. So we have an opportunity to enhance that space and provide some community recreational spaces because of that new gym. Now, new construction projects and modernizations do not come along very often, as you can see from the 18 years in that. And so this is now a really great time to capitalize on that opportunity. So what is our request? Because we don't get these projects very often, I think leveraging the government's investment in this project, which is about a $35 million investment by the province of Alberta. If the city of Lethbridge was willing to upsize that gymnasium by 200 meters squared, that would take it from an elementary-sized gym to a middle school-sized gym. It gives it more court space and the ability for our community to have access to that space after school hours. That's about a $1.2 million commitment that we are requesting from you. And of course, project timing. Timing is always the key to these projects. Because we're entering design, we would need a commitment by October 31st if the city is willing to partner on adding that additional space. Now, in the past, when the city has invested in our school projects, they've provided a third of the funds at the start of construction, a third at 50%, and a third at completion. Now, we understand that this request is falling outside your 2027 capital improvement program, and that this could be, that particular schedule could be problematic. And so we would be willing to look at, if you wanted to put into your letter of commitment, that the conditions of that commitment was that the funding didn't come until 2028. And I know that's one of the recommendations in your background. Certainly, we would take that forward to Alberta Education and Alberta Infrastructure, because we know that you have a lot of capital projects to fund, and that we need to be considerate of your timelines as well. And I know I was very brief and short, but I know you have a busy agenda, but I do want to thank you for your continued partnership with the school boards in Lethbridge. I know our Board of Trustees appreciates the relationship that we have with the City of Lethbridge, and we're really looking forward to this project that's investing over $35 million into this modernization, and really an opportunity here to enhance some of the community spaces in North Lethbridge. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Lee. Appreciate the presentation. Very thorough. Oh, she works for. She works for. Oh, that's not very nice.
But thank you.
Super. Should know that. Thank you. Open it up for questions. I do want to start off with one for our city manager as designate. We've done this with many schools over the past, and usually new builds or renovations, modernizations. Is this kind of fit in your opinion, with similar projects we've done in the past?
Through to you, Mayor Higgin, yes. We've done a number of these projects. In fact, in the current CIP, we have two of them, one for Holy Spirit School and also a Cole Levered Ferrandi gym as well. So it's not unusual that we do these. This is a normal practice that we've done this. We've done this for many, many years.
And the next question, Councillor Campbell.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for the presentation. It's pretty exciting news. My question, and just in my own wonderment, because it's such an old school and doing the renovations and the changes and everything like that, is there any concern about, the old asbestos abatement stuff that you got to do? Anything that you're going to find? I'm sure you must have vetted, or they have vetted everything to say, yes, this can be done. The structure is such that we can add, so I guess the question is, you don't foresee any substantial other costs that could come before us, with the go-ahead?
No, they've accounted for doing the investigation into asbestos, as any asbestos removal that would be required in the building when they're. And again, we're going to preserve the old 113-year-old heritage site piece of the building, and some of the demolition will take place in the 1950s building, but they always take care of the abatement, and we're building a new gym, so the cost is actually brand new when we go with the new gym. Yeah.
And I suspect, historically speaking, that you have to follow some guidelines. Is it a historical site?
It's not officially
okay.
designated, but
Okay.
we are treating it as a delicate historical piece of the city of Lethbridge, and we want to preserve the beauty of that school.
Good, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, Associate Superintendent Lee. I just had to sneak into the package to find out. Thanks, Chris. Question through you, Mr. Mayor, to City Manager or Designate. One of the recommendations is to put this into the next CIP to be funded in 2028 entirely. Traditionally, we have done the third. Is there a possibility? I'm not a big fan of saying we'll put this into the next council's CIP because we don't know who'll be sitting here, and they could say, no, we've got a different use for that money when it's kind of necessary if we commit to it. I'd rather fund it today, but I don't know if that's a possibility, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. Yes, I understand what you're referring to here in regards to that. So one of the pressures for ourselves will be the MRSR, just from the point of view. So if you notice in the package here, what it's talking about is either even in that point, we're seeing MRSR or Major Capital Projects Reserve or another funding source. That gives us a little bit of latitude as we go along internally. To answer your question, if we did it sooner than this, that takes some of the pressures that we're facing in there is some of the decisions the fall council needs, potentially will be making in regards to the exhibition and a few other larger items that could come out of one-time funds. If you remember a number of weeks back, I had mentioned that is about $4 million after commitments. If you take a look at the balance without new revenues going in, because I don't know what that would be like yet, and those commitments. So that would take that contingency amount down even closer to zero amount. So now there is also the Major Capital Projects Reserve. I'd have to do a little bit more work at this stage here to see if we could. We might be able to do that inside of there. So if that was the case, if that was the direction, it might just be that we would have to go back into a little bit more work here to really ensure that between now and 2027, that we would actually have the funding inside, or 2028 in this ask.
Okay, and thank you for that. If I can, Mr. Mayor, just to follow up, previous council did the CIP and purposely sequestered some dollars for future projects that either come over the wall or we could find some matching dollars for. Is there any of those dollars remaining? Is that another source we could utilize? It's a way of putting it into the CIP without making the next council have to approve it.
Yes, I'm just seeing if I can bring it up here on, so I know exactly what you're talking about. It was the $10 million that council set aside for matching components with other grants.
Correct.
Just scrolling down here to see if I've got that information in front of me here right now. Yes, there probably would be. Here again, that would be something that to consider, here again, what in the fall of any sort of capital and some of the other items are coming back. Currently, the last information I have in my files right here is that there is about 7.7 million of that fund still available.
All right, and so would it be possible then, instead of putting it into the next CIP, which is somewhat out of our control, just amending our current CIP? Is that something that...
If council so wishes to do so, we could do that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Crowson.
Thank you, Mayor Hagan. Thank you, Ms. Lee, for the information and for telling us you're going to take care of that historic building. Let's get down to some nuts and bolts, because that is your job. Ongoing operations, if we approve expanding the size, is it the school board who pays, or school district that pays for ongoing operations of an enlarged gym?
Yes, that is correct. We pay for the light, heat, and all that maintenance on the gymnasium, yes.
So if we approve the money, we have no future expenses from your perspective?
That's it.
Okay. Well, Mr. Grindle, you're sitting here, and I have some questions for you, because, I mean, the idea here is if we expand this, it's for the community use, et cetera. So from the city and our residents' perspective more specifically, are we receiving community use of the gyms and the schools that we have expanded, and are we seeing good use for that space?
Thank you for the question through the mayor to Councillor Carlson. Yes, very much. The difference between a standard elementary sized gymnasium that is funded in any new project by the province, and Christine can correct me if I'm wrong on this, and that of a middle-sized school gymnasium, if you kind of picture an elementary-sized gym would be one volleyball court. A middle-sized school gymnasium is 2 volleyball courts. So the access for the community, and if you have a volleyball team, a singular team might be able to use one of those smaller-sized gyms. We don't see a huge demand for that. Like if you looked at our stable of gymnasiums, we have pressures at that middle-sized gym. The older gyms, Galbraith being one, we don't have a demand for. So that gym right now has roughly 8 or 9 bookings a year, whereas the pressure for Teresa Calcutta or any of those others is far more.
So this would give that area of North Lethbridge much better access to the recreational activities than they're currently seeing?
That is correct, but our bookings are done not by area so much as how they are, assigned.
Right, people don't mind driving around Lethbridge.
Correct, yeah.
And so overall, doing this from a city perspective is a way of getting these resources for our community without having ongoing operational costs, without having to build our own, essentially.
Sure, a gymnasium such as that, if we were to build it ourselves, would cost way more than 1.2 million. Obviously, we'd have direct control then, but then we'd have the operational costs ourselves.
And so there's a reason we have about a 70-year-old plan of working with the school boards.
Correct, model for the province.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Grindle. Thank you, Mayor Higgin.
Thank you. I see no further questions in the queue, and so thank you very much, Slee. And my apologies, as soon as I knew that Lethbridge School Division was coming here, Christine Light is in the head, and so of course, Trustee Light, so my apologies. So thank you very much for the presentation.
Time today.
Thank you. We'll go now to Councillor Parker, to Galbraith Elementary School Modernization. 5.1, be resolved that the Economic and Finance Standing Policy Committee recommend that City Council advance $1,200,000 from the 2027 to 2030 CIP to be used in 2027 and or 2028, with the one-time funding allocated from the Municipal Revenue Stabilization Reserve, the MRSR, or another funding source as identified by administration to upsize the Galbraith School Gymnasium to a middle school sized gymnasium, and the city funding be contingent upon, number 1, a commitment from the Lethbridge School Division to provide a minimum of 2 nights averaged over the school year per week of community access as per the terms of the joint use agreement, and number 2, a written commitment of funding from the Government of Alberta. Further be resolved that the Economic and Finance Standing Policy Committee recommend that City Council authorize the Mayor to provide a letter of commitment for the funding with the aforementioned conditions. And Councillor Carlson, did you? Yes. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I can, a question on this, if you don't mind, is do we know when council needs to make a decision? If economic forwards this to council, it'll be a couple weeks. And I'm wondering if, because personally, I'm not comfortable with making a commitment against a future council CIP because they could change it. And I don't like making a commitment today that can be changed in the future. So I'd rather amend our current, if we're going to go forward with this, I'd rather amend our current CIP to add this. But I don't know if that's a quick fix to a resolution or if it's a referral to administration to come back with a CIP amendment, or if that's doable. I heard Mr. Matthews nearly choke on the word nearing zero at one point, so I don't want to empty the coffers. But if it's possible, I'm just wondering, how would we accomplish that? Is it a quick fix, or is it something I'd have to make a referral to administration on?
Mr. Matthews.
Thank you, Councilor Carlson. In that regard, the one thing, so a couple things on the dollar values on it. So I guess depending on which funding source you pick on that, if you're taking the CIP funds that are in that 7 million, that's already in the approved CIP. It's actually just us coming back and doing another sheet on that. So I think that could be handled at a later date. If it's some of the things coming from a different funding source, I would prefer to actually take a look, maybe next council meeting come back with actually something to take a look at it, just to make sure that I could give you a full, some comfort, and I'll be honest, work with my team too, just make sure there isn't something here I'm missing on it there in a quick thought process here, that we don't overextend ourselves there somewhere. Correct. But to your point, if you want to use the remaining, which is roughly just over 7 million or 7.7 million that's inside of that fund. If that's the case, then we could do that. The only caveat I'll put there on the risk side of that is that keep in mind that in the fall, there could be coming back things like council would make a decision on demolition costs and so forth at LDE, and these would be some of the funds that would potentially be earmarked or potential funding source for that as well too. So, regardless of all that, the quick answer to your question, or quicker answer to your question, is if you want to do it today, take it out of the approved CIP funds and just request us to come back with a CIP project. And then you may want to then add on for us to come back also with some information on forecast on the reserve and so forth for maybe some other pieces. And I can give you only high level at this stage because we're in the middle of all that. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that. And again, approval today is approval to send it to council for the decision. So by that time, some high level, 20,000 foot, I'm sure Mr. Matthews will have something there at that time. So yeah, so this is just a recommendation from council, or sorry, from SPC, now I'm getting backwards, SPC to go to council, and at that time, can Councillor Carlson make an amendment at that time, I would imagine?
Yes.
Councillor Carlson, go ahead.
So thank you for that, Mr. Mayor, but I'm wondering if I need to make an amendment to this to give direction to the city manager to do the work, or will the work just be, an angel got its wings, or will that work be done with possibilities for the next council meeting?
I would always say it's better to put in a resolution to request administration to come back with some information at council. So I think it would just be a tag on to number 3 in here, just saying that as it comes forward for administration to bring back some options for council.
Yeah, so further be resolved, blah, 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 and another further be resolved that administration bring back options regarding amendments to the current CIP. Does that make enough sense?
Yes, it does. And I think what we will do, with those options, will include a CIP sheet so that if council wants those options, we'll have that. And so then council can approve those at that time.
N49.1.
D something or other. Yeah, D something or other. Yeah.
I would make that.
And that's for a date of, again, high level, it's going to be our next council meeting, correct?
Or do you want it to come to economic in July?
Or just come back to economic in July?
I would look to Mr. Grindle or the representative from the
You got October, I think I had heard. Is that correct, Ms. Lee? Okay.
So we've got some time.
So if you have time, then let's bring it. It would be better to bring it to economic, and then there can be any sort of discussion that council wants to have, or others would want to
I'm
have.
looking for a nod there from Ms. Lee. So is that fine coming, if it comes back to economic in July, in case there's any questions, that timeline is fine with yourself, Ms. Lee? Okay, great.
July is a kind of crazy packed agenda, if I recall.
It is very packed, but I don't know the timeline of this, if that work
I
is
was
done.
thinking September.
Ooh, that's getting close.
You know, just what I will say on this, if council would like to do it next meeting, and I'll have to buy my team coffee and other things right about now as they're about to want to kill me, but we could get this together to bring it forward. So, if you'd rather not put it on a very busy economic SPC, we could do it next meeting.
All right, so we've heard that, and he's going to be buying a lot of coffee and for his staff, but for the next meeting, just to give some assurance before it heads to council in July. It would be in July in front of council. All right.
Okay.
So with that, go ahead.
Sorry, I think Ms. Hilford is just sort of fixing up some language? Because I think what the discussion
It'll be a referral if it's going to,
to,
Referral
but it's not going to go
to,
to economic anymore. It's going to council.
is it going to economic or council?
we're going to bring it to council.
You're going to bring it to council, just as we had before. So this,
Tallman, not a referral now. Just, sorry.
Like it?
yeah, we were planning, Talman was planning on going to a future SPC, but it's actually going to go to council. And that's the coming, Control Z about 10 times and you would have it.
Basically,
All
further.
right, and as it's going through, I think we know
We
that.
understand the gist of it. I just want to check with Councillor Parker. It is his resolution.
Councillor Parker?
If he's okay with me
Yep.
messing with it. And that would just, a meeting of city council regarding current CIP amendments.
June 25th,
24th.
Perfect. That makes, Mr. City Manager's designate, does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
All right. Councillor Parker? All right, question has been called. All in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. So I have a resolution here that's on the floor from Councillor Middleton Hope, Economic Development Lethbridge Annual Report. Now, I'll have Madam City Clerk, if she could, we did have a resolution previously, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, and but we do have Councillor Middleton Hope's as well on here, and just to explain so we know exactly where we are with that reso.
Thank you, Mayor Hagan. So the recommendations in the report had three options to them, or three resolutions to them, and Councillor Middleton Hope put a motion on the floor to refer to November budget. So that's on the floor right now, on top of the resolution that was in the report. So it's 6.1. So that got postponed from last meeting to this meeting, and now your motion's on the floor, which is, it's not on there, that the Economic and Finance Standing Policy Committee refer this report to administration for review and investigation, with a report back to the Economic and Finance SPC in conjunction with the annual operating budget review in November. Right, it's on the screen now.
If you had the opportunity to explain that, Councillor
So
Middleton Hope.
considering what other machinations have occurred, and what is coming before Economic SPC and Council, I will withdraw this motion.
If it's on the floor, Madam City Clerk, it still has to go to a vote, correct?
It can go to a vote. We can do it by general consent, so if anybody
anyone
objects, then it would
concerned?
go to a vote. But you can ask if
Yeah.
there's general consent for the withdrawal.
I'm seeing general consent. All right, with that, so we will have it
Good. Done.
disappeared. And now we'll, sorry, Councilor Middleton Hope, did you have, you're good, all right. All right, so I do have now on the floor, we'll put from Councilor Schmidt-Rempel, Economic Development Lethbridge Annual Report 6.1. Yeah. Be it resolved that the Economic and Finance Standing Policy Committee recommends that Council, number one, accept the presentation documents provided as information as per requirement of the Memorandum of Understanding. Number two, amend Budget Initiative N42, Economic Development and Market Intelligence of the 2023 to 2026 operating budget as follows. Include rail supply chain optimization strategy and trade and logistics gap analysis to the scope. And B, remove Metro Economic Trends Report and GDP reporting ranking from the scope. And number three, adjust the City of Lethbridge funding amounts from 2025 of $79,000 and 2026 of $28,500 to the proposed amounts of 2025 $102,500 and 2026 $5,000. So open to questions. Are there any questions? Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you. So just so we're clear on this particular motion, I guess this would be either to the mover or to Mr. Brierly through to Mr. Matthews. This is really just, this money has already been approved. This is just simply moving money from one year to another. Is that, do I understand that correctly?
To Councillor Milton Hope, yes, it's moving within it. There is some change. So one thing it's doing there is changing some of the components, i.e. what was originally in the budget for work, to a couple other different items as well. And that's why it's changing the dollars.
Okay, so in effect, it's administrative more than anything.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Carlson?
Councillor Middleton Hope asked my question, so I was trying to turn it off.
All right. Don't touch it. So to Mr. City Manager, in light of what we've heard, we've got a few things going on with, we heard at our council meeting, a review, et cetera. This is, in your opinion, fine, moving forward, that with the changes, it's not too much of a change of scope. And I guess I could ask, I don't know if I would ask City Clerk or yourself or who regarding the change of scope. Is it too broad or does it fit inside? Do we have to change N42 is what I'm saying? Do we have to go back and change that scope?
So to answer your question there, Mayor Higgin, they actually have already done that. So we will post an amended initiative, which talks about the rail chain optimization strategy and the trade logistics gap analysis, I believe is the right terminology. And it's attached into the documents as well.
Excellent. Okay, so we're fine moving forward. That's okay. With that, I see no further questions. So to open debate, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
I didn't even touch the buttons. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for the clarification on this. I will just ask one question to the city manager. Between the last meeting and this meeting, you were able to connect with Mr. Lewington and his team and address any issues that there may have been that came up during that past meeting, correct?
Through the mayor, yes, that is correct.
Okay, so just moving forward on this then, this does, this issue is specific to N42, which we have already budgeted the funds for. EDL is asking for a different disbursement of the funds and shifting of scope in order to utilize a $155,000 grant that they have received from the province. The City of Lethbridge did support the grant application. The grant has been approved by the Minister of Jobs, Economy and Trade. So that's what we're moving forward here on, just a bit of a shift, some housekeeping and getting economic development to work on the work that they are going to be doing under N42. If there are no further questions or debates,
See no questions or debate.
then I will call for the vote.
Question's been called. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you. Now, in your package, we did have, this is submission from Mr. Laverty. Be it resolved, the Economic and Finance Standing Policy Committee received the information for the tax rate review report. Now, I'm going to ask Mr. Laverty if I could. I know it's not a presentation, but of course, we've done this a few times. Being taxation is kind of on top of mind on a few people's minds right now. Would you be able to come forward and just kind of give, we do have the slides and stuff in there, if there's a 20,000-foot discussion on that, some maybe important things that you've thought to maybe highlight in that. Is that putting you on the spot, Mr. Laverty? Not at all?
That's fine.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. I'm trying to think about the most important slides in the presentation. The last slide actually is a fair representation of where we stand on a per capita basis. Now, since this report was submitted, the Alberta government has updated the population numbers. The chart is pretty much identical for the 23 numbers. And our costs have gone down $49. So,
like that
as
happens.
far as, we can talk about the medians if you want to compare the median assessments of, like, whatever you want to start.
And you know, and thank you for that. And this last slide actually does, you know, this picture speaks 1,000 words, as you say. And the property tax per capita, sitting middle of the pack. In comparison to other communities and stuff like that, we're middle of the pack. So hearing we're either too high or too low, someone's not going to complain of being too low. Don't get me wrong, but we're sitting at the middle of the pack currently.
Yeah.
And I will open it up to questions. And so maybe if you hang up by the mic, I'm sure you'll have a few. Councillor Crowson.
Thank you, Mayor Higgin. Thank you very much, Mr. Laverty. I know one of the things you and I have discussed and we've talked about is the amount of property that is exempt. So I thank you for the historic exemption percent. When you look at that slope, it is going up. I mean, we're about 10% in 2008. We're now 16.9%. What are some of the driving factors in us getting so much more property tax exempt over those 16 or so years?
Through your worship to Councillor Crowson, just the amount of development that is being put up that's exempt from taxation. And there's also machinery equipment that's exempt from taxation. So any larger facilities that have a significant portion of machinery equipment would increase that. Some of the new legislation that might be coming in soon could also increase that.
But we're also seeing places, and again, like 13th Street North, for example, where we're seeing a lot of commercial property now become churches, right? So we had something that was higher tax rate, which is now tax exempt. Are we seeing this in other communities? Are we, we've got the Lethbridge rates here. How are we comparing to other communities? Are we higher than them with tax exempt or similar or what?
We haven't conducted that study for this year, but in the past we have, and we are on the higher side.
And needless to say, the more that's tax exempt, the more burden put on everyone else who's paying taxes?
Yes, that's true, yeah.
Okay. And you've given us this year's examples of how we compare to the other communities. Anything when you look at, past years or previous years, any comparators that have really changed? Is there any, have we gone to the front of the pack, back of the pack with anything, or have we pretty much stayed the same and sort of remained with the rest?
And through the mayor to Councillor Crowson, yes, it's pretty much the same as it was in the past.
So all the communities sort of put up taxes about the same rate?
Relatively speaking, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Laverty. Thank you, Mayor Higgin.
Thank you, Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, and thank you to my colleague who asked two of the questions that I had. I would like, however, clarification from Mr. Matthews vis-a-vis the percentage. We have kicked this around a number of times. Could we please have a definitive number?
So if I'm understanding you, Councillor Milton Hope, what you're referring to is there's always a lot of debate around where you hear all the community where the highest property taxes in Alberta at times, or some of that information. A lot of times what they're looking at is the mill rate. The individuals are looking at not necessarily what Mr. Laverty is having within this package here, where it shows the median. In fact, I think, Tolman, if you go back a couple slides inside of here and we bring up the median tax rate. Keep going back a little bit further. There's one slide, about the second or third slide into the package. One bar forward, right there. There. Make sure I got this one. Yes, that's it. Oh, this is median assessment, sorry. Let's go to the tax rate, yeah. Let's go to the next piece here. One more down, I think. Keep going. Mr. Laverty, am I going the wrong direction? I'm going the wrong direction. Yes, let's go the other way here, Tolman. And right there. So what a lot of people you'll see in different reports and so forth, they go and they use just tax rates, and sure, that's one component of the actual equation, not the whole equation. So you have to take the total assessment times the tax rate, and then components. That's pieces of it. And in this example, for example, the best way to do apples to apples comparison is to take a look at the median taxes between each community, i.e. the assessed value in those areas, and multiply against the tax rate. What this graph is showing is we are not the highest in the province in regards to that when you do that. It's just that sometimes it's hard in the community. They look at different aspects of numbers, and they see a mill rate or a tax rate, and they think that go by that. Well, no, you have to look at the property values. So the property values in Lethbridge, the medium tax value. Mr. Laverty, what is the median value for this year?
Off the top of my head, I think it's 340,000.
Yeah, so roughly around 340,000. And what I'm meaning in regards to that is if you take a look at the assessed values, the median value inside of a city like Calgary or somewhere else, those are much higher. So depending on the rates and so forth, and we multiply it. One slide back, yeah. So if you go one slide back there, you'll see one more slide back. Just the assessment value. And you can see here, this is what I think what Mr. Laverty is referring to, an example here where when you look at the median assessed value, you can see a big difference between what the assessed values of average properties are here in Lethbridge. And as Mr. Laverty has in his presentation, that also means a big difference in the monthly living cost for individuals. So there's a balancing piece. But I think to the moral of your story, Councillor Milton Hope, we are not the highest when you multiply it out and do the math and do true apples to apples comparisons.
Thank you for that. That clarifies it. There is one other question that I have vis-a-vis the finances. We have consistently, in my opinion, and I stand to be wrong, tax exemption indicates percentages is 19.1. You have told me that number on a number of occasions. It is stuck in my brain. This says 16.9. Can you explain?
Well, I can explain the 16.9. So it really comes down to is basically about 17% right now, that value. What's exemption? I think what's going to I think where you're going with this, Councillor Milton Hope, and maybe going to in this one here is it is increasing. And we're seeing increasing components, and Councillor Crowson asked that question in regards to it. So when the university or some of those larger or government institutions build large capital projects, that assessed value goes up, and of course those sections are not taxable, so therefore our assessed value go up. One thing to keep in mind for council with some of the new legislation coming forward in the fall, that also could increase even further with the nonprofit affordable housing components as well too. So we are expecting to see that if the legislation comes through the way, we haven't seen the regulations yet, but we're expecting to see that one go up as further as high as that. But actually the number that's here is right. If I had said something different in it, it might have been just that was on top of my mind at the time versus the cold hard facts, which is what Mr. Laverty has. So
okay, so we're at 16.9 currently. We're anticipating that that's going to increase?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
And if I could just follow up on Councillor Middleton Hope's question, I don't know if Mr. Laverty, you can answer this in comparison, and I think maybe Councillor Crowson had asked that with other communities, I either didn't catch it or maybe you didn't reply to there. How does that compare, or do you have that number?
Oh, we don't have it currently.
Okay.
We didn't do this year, but we have done it in the past years. And
so in the past, let's say that in the past,
we're definitely on the higher side.
We're higher side of exempt.
Yeah.
Can you say a past number? What would it be a couple of years ago here compared to somewhere else?
Trying to think off the top of my head.
Don't worry, but it is much higher in, are we one of the highest in the province of exempt properties then?
We have historically been, yeah.
Historically, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Crowson.
So we're tying back into that, Mr. Matthews. Of course, we have from the province grants in place of taxes. Can you overview how that has changed? That has reduced in the last few years. How is it reduced?
Yes, Councillor Crowson. So in regards to that, it is reduced by about 50% or 50% in value. So we've seen, so basically normal calculation that we would do and we send to the province, they only pay 50% of that value.
So we have more places exempt, but getting less money for those places that are exempt, and we're expecting even more to come in the fall.
That is correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Laverty, for all the information and coming here to explain it all. A quick question. Machinery, M&E, machinery and equipment. A few municipalities include it in their assessment value and tax it. Why do most communities not?
Through your worship to Councillor Carlson, that's a good question.
Thank you.
To be honest, in past many years ago, there were decisions on whether you created a business tax or you tax machinery and equipment, and a lot of municipalities went towards the business tax instead of taxing the machinery and equipment. There are several municipalities that do tax machinery and equipment, and it does change the ratios and everything else, of course.
Because what amount of our exemptions are M&E rather than just the properties and the not-for-profits? But
I'd be guessing at this point, I think it's 2 to 3%.
okay, thank you for that. Another question I have, and we talk about our, where the heck is it? Sorry, I'm scrolling. I'll just make it up. We talked about our different tax rates for various subclasses and multifamily. And it's shown here what our historic ratios have been. I didn't see any comparisons to other communities. Did I miss that, or is that something that could be made available?
It's a study that we could undertake. There's not a lot of municipalities that have a different rate.
Aha, and that's the point of my question.
But some are higher than ours as well, so.
All right, because philosophically, is it, as we're trying to create more housing, more affordable housing, more densification, it seems to me it's counterintuitive to say, we really want this, and we're going to tax you at 1.6% if you do it. So it makes sense to me, yeah, I'm just going to put in a single-family residential because my tax is 80% cheaper. 80%, whatever the number would be. So I'm wondering, if philosophically, is that a discussion that is having around the province? Has anyone heard? Because we are trying to increase rental units, increase housing units, increase affordable, and it seems that our tax structure goes the opposite way and says, yep, build it and we're going to tax you more. And I'd like to know because I think it was 1975 that was corrected. I wasn't quite elected yet. And I'm just wondering, was it because they put more pressure on our capacity? You build up a huge office tower or a huge residential tower, you've got to put in the infrastructure to do that. And so what was the thinking behind it? And I don't know who would answer that. I don't think any of us were here in 70, if it was made in 75. But.
So to Councillor Carlson, I'm not 100% sure exactly what the thinking was of the day. I would presume, similar to what you're thinking, that it was the number of people using that facility, but still consuming a portion of the tax-supported services throughout the community, parks, infrastructure, roadways, and so forth. And so it was a different way. To your point in regards to looking at whether the multifamily rate and versus this residential rate and how that works, that's, what I'm listening to your conversation that would come back also in a couple different things coming forward is some of the policies and so forth that on the, for example, the Housing Accelerator Fund and so forth, the federal government is looking at, also maybe some of the development-based incentives and even the affordable housing programs ourselves. So if council wishes us to do a little bit more work in that area, we would add it probably into those pieces to actually take a look at as a rate piece. We can go back in our history, unless Mr. Laverty has anything in the background here, why Lethbridge chose to do it this way. I know we've maintained it for decades, but if council wants to change that to incentivize or maybe stop de-incentivizing, if that's the case, then yes, we can go take a look at it. Keep in mind that what it does here in any of these ratios, really what it's doing here is shifting tax from one taxpayer to another. So the total bill of taxation still stays the same for the property. We just said we would move it from multifamily to residential or to commercial, depending on which way it goes. Just a different ratepayer.
And thank you for that. And Mr. Mayor, if I may, I don't see anyone else lit up. If I can follow up on that, perhaps. When I first got elected to council, there was a lot of talk around the changes, the different basically, yeah, subclasses. Thank you for who's ever helping me. I appreciate it. And it was that folks in running a business or industry, they could write some of these things off on their provincial and federal taxes. I kept hearing that. I've never been a landlord, so I don't know. Do we know, are any of these, I kind of get the idea that if we charge a little bit more, but if they can write it off their other orders of government taxes, it doesn't make any difference to them. Is that a true thing? Because I've heard two conflicting views on that. That one, folks that are much more business savvy than I can deduct things from their other taxes. And then I've heard, no, you cannot. That's old school.
Yeah, so there is, to Councillor Carlson, to that regard. So when it comes to income tax and so forth, and when you look at it for whether it's corporate income tax or personal income tax, there's differences between it. So it depends really on how the organization's set up as a business, for one thing. But if you look at organizations that are corporate in nature, property taxes are a cost to their organization, and they would have them as an expenditure. But that would be different depending on small businesses too. So if you're set up as a small business, it depends. If you have an office out of your home and you have those kind of things, there's all sorts of different criteria inside of the, in the CRA's guidelines of what you can or cannot claim along the way there and how much. So I guess the answer is it depends.
Yeah. Okay. That's probably why I've heard two different answers to that story. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And yes, as you have to be making money as a business owner to be able to have that tax deduction, because, to be able to have those write-offs. But any further questions? Seeing none, I'll turn this over to Vice Chair Schmidt-Rempel. Be it resolved, the Economic and Finance Standing Policy Committee received for information the tax rate review report. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The report we just received represents a comprehensive review of Lethbridge's tax position internally as measured against provincial comparators. The data represents the municipal assessments, which were audited by the province, and tax rates are based on approved bylaws for 2024. If there's no other debate or questions from my colleagues.
Yes, Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, and thank you for the information in this. It has piqued my interest around our multifamily rate, and I'm wondering if I can ask that more information be provided regarding our historical multifamily rate, as well as comparators to other municipalities at some future point. It's not pressing to me, I'm just more interested.
Through the mayor to Councillor Carlson, yes, we definitely can do that. But what I would look to is a bit of latitude and timeframes. Mr. Laverty's group is in the middle of tax season and so forth. So I'm wondering if that would be okay if we brought it back to an economic later in the fall.
That's fine by me. It'll mostly have a bigger impact on future councils. It's just, it's good information to know why it was done, how it's achieved in other communities. I'd also love to know more about the machinery and equipment exemptions as well, but I don't want to overtax you.
So if we were going to do that, Mr. Laverty, I'm just looking to you. Would Q4 be all right? Would that be an all right time frame to give you?
If we're doing that in a Q4, we would need to have an amendment to, a friendly to this one, just to add in that, if we could, to the resolution. Because I think it's a great idea. And I think that maybe we should, look at that. Ask and it appeared. Provided regarding, be further be resolved that additional information be provided regarding the city's historical rate with comparators to the other municipalities at a future meeting of Economic and Finance Standing Policy Committee. Should we say at a Q4? By Q4?
I don't know if Councillor Carlson can comment as well, but it doesn't say to what. It's basically regarding the multifamily rate.
If I may suggest, maybe so the multifamily and machinery and equipment comparisons or information. And then if it could be at the end of Q4, that gives us a little bit of latitude, and most likely you'll come there in the November timeframe. Well, I'll let Mr. Laverty to say, 'cause he knows his schedule, and I know that around that period, there's also the assessment for next year that comes and so forth, so I'll let him speak to what the actual Q period he wants to set.
Even if you say the end of Q4, it's at a Q4, so that can be the end one here as well.
Yeah, I believe we can make that work, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. And my apologies to those in the gallery. I need to ask if there's anybody who would like to further speak to this before this resolution goes forward. Is there anyone like to speak regarding the tax rate review? Anyone? Sure. Mr. Laverty, you're fine. If we have any questions, I'll kind of back up and ask you to come up. But Mr. Lear?
Very much, Your Worship. It's always humbling to appear before such an august gathering of Lethbridge's best and brightest. But what I did want to say is apples, not all apples are the same. You got your Macintosh and you got everything else. In this case, we're looking at tax base and revenues. But what we're not looking at is really the affordability factor. And what I see here, being, your taxpayer, is no particular interest in looking at how Lethbridge can have the lowest taxes. What I'd rather see here is, how can we keep the glass half full? So I would like to know how we can fill the glass, make Lethbridge more affordable, considering the fact, if you look at what they call a discomfort index, that is our incomes versus our expenses. How does Lethbridge stack up? So I really think that's fine to be able to brag that we're in the middle of the pack. Who could complain about that? But I really think we should look at other measures that can be taken to, again, doing your best to make Lethbridge the best place to live for the greatest number of people. So just my observations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lear. Appreciate that. I'll say one thing on that is I've just was speaking with actually three new neighbors of mine that have moved in to my area that have moved in from BC, and the reason they moved is because of the cost of living. It was about 60% of what it was in BC. Not saying what it could be in any other areas. They're extremely happy because he says now there's more money in my pocket, larger house, less money. My money goes a lot further. I'm close to the mountains, et cetera, et cetera. So that's three of them that have been very happy in moving into my area. Don't know if it equates across the community, but there's a reason there's an influx of people into our community. Councillor Crowson.
Thank you, Mayor Higgin. It wasn't that long ago that Mr. Laverty and his department looked into tax classes as a report that I requested come forward, and we did talk about M&E at that time. So if we also find that report that was submitted and circulate that among council, it may answer some of Councillor Carlson's questions that we've already looked into, because it did talk about why we chose not to go with M&E, why we went to business tax. That information is there. So instead of having Mr. Laverty redo some of that work, I think we just need to recirculate that report as well for part of this conversation.
Excellent. Councillor Middleton.
Oh, thank you. I have a question for Mr. Lear, if you'd mind coming back up again. Mr. Lear, you've come before this, as you refer to it, this august gathering. You take some pretty good shots at us, Mr. Lear, and I'm certainly glad of listening to your points of view. I think one of the things that we have to take into consideration is that a huge percentage of what we tax goes to services. Is that not correct, Mr. Matthews? Providing services to our citizens?
All the money that we provide in taxing goes as services to the city.
Good. Then Mr. Lear, I wonder, do you have some recommendations or suggestions in regards to what services we might want to cut in order to reduce the tax burden on our citizens?
That is an excellent question, and I'm so glad you asked. In fact, to properly answer that, I am no municipal finance expert. As a matter of fact, like everyone else in the city, I lack any economic credentials. So what I would suggest is that, in fact, an objective third-party review of value for money of all municipal services be undertaken. And in that way, we can identify ways that we can economize, ways that we can maybe streamline, make things more efficient, and in fact ensure that taxpayers feel confident that their dollars are getting put to the furthest and best use.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
If I could just continue on that as well, Mr. Lear. So we've seen the fee-for-service. I'm so glad you mentioned that. It's just to have a robust review of all the fee-for-service or MOUs that are out there is what I'm hearing you say, right?
No, I did not say that.
So don't review the fee-for-services?
No, I'm suggesting that there be a review of all municipal services, not just the external ones, but where the bulk of the spending actually goes, which is done internally. And
okay.
Who's making sure that the citizens are getting good value for money? Who's doing that review? We don't have a municipal auditor at a provincial level to make sure that municipalities are necessarily delivering the best value for money. So how can citizens be sure they're getting the most for their bucks? And just to clarify again to your last comment, I was commenting on affordability, not for people that come from other jurisdictions, which have maybe cashed in on their real estate windfalls. I'm talking about the ordinary people here, as Councillor Carlson says, or Carlson rather, it's the ones that have to live in multifamily dwellings. What are we doing to make their lives better?
No, thank you, but I just want to make sure that, so a review is important, and I agree with you, whether it's internal, external, all are valid. Is that fair to say?
I think the more review, the better.
Awesome. Thank you. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, just a question through you to City Manager. When did we last do a review as is being discussed? Because I seem to recall that I brought it forward and we did a whole lot of work on it. We spent a whole lot of money on it. And I would not like the impression to be out there that we don't do internal reviews. So did we not just do?
Yes, within the last 4 years.
Thank you.
All right. With that, I see no further questions, so I can go to the resolution again here. I'm sorry. Oh, here we go. It's up there. Oh, yes, we added. So further be resolved, the additional information provided regarding the city's historical multifamily machinery and equipment rates with comparators to other municipalities by the end of Q4 2024 at a meeting of the Economic and Finance Standing Policy Committee. And that is brought forward by Vice Chair.
Yeah, and I think we just, I believe we, and correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Carlson, we want to correct historical to historic?
Oh, I said hysterical.
Oh, hysterical? No, you're okay with that wording?
Historical.
Okay. Okay.
And you're okay with that friendly
Yeah.
amendment?
Yeah. All right. With that, no further
No,
questions?
I think if there's no further questions, and I think I started the debate, so.
And you ended.
And I have nothing further to add than what I started with.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Question's been called. All in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Next, in the public package we had, and I'm sure my colleagues have dug deep into this, a procurement summary reporting harmonization. And if there's any questions, I know that we do have, here we are over on this side over here. Tyler is here to answer any questions. If there's any questions, Councillor Crowson to start.
Thank you, Mayor Higgin. I appreciate your bringing this forward because it does take quite a bit of time and the information can be found elsewhere instead of the monthly procurements. Can you tell me exactly where the information would be found? Because we do get members of the public who reach out going, I noticed this in the procurement report. So how would they find this information ongoing if we choose to go this route?
Great question. Thank you for that. So there are two places that we formally report out. One is on Lethbridge Bids and Tenders, so bidsandtenders.lethbridge.ca. The other would be on purchasingconnection.ca. Purchasingconnection.ca is going to be the formal, the formal website that has been agreed to at the federal and provincial level. So I would suggest that most people can take a look there. However, that does report the high-level information that's outlined in Article 516 specifically. If you want to take a deeper dive, take a look at who's pulling bid packages, see what the nitty-gritty of our process really looks like. I would suggest everyone go to bids and tenders because there's a much more comprehensive set of data available for residents.
And the idea here, again, when you look at how much time is going throughout a year into, creating this report for council and for the community through council, it does then allow you to focus your time on other areas. So what is the major focus of your department?
Ooh, that's a large question. I'll say the major focus that we look at is really making sure that we provide defensible procurements and provide best value for publicly tendered services, goods, constructions, things of that nature. But the significant benefit that we would see in the, I'll say, reduction of reporting requirements would really be in our alignment of the information that we put back out to the supply base at large. So typically we'll have a variety of admin functions that have been taken up by the corporate buyers themselves as opposed to the admin staff as a result of the workforce reduction that occurred in 2020.
So this does reduce a redundancy that's already existing and makes better use of staff time.
Absolutely correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Higgin.
Thank you. Councillor Midland Hope.
Thank you, Mr. Kaysor. I'm just wondering, and I may have missed it, but I did not see, we've asked to harmonize reporting. We've asked to stop monthly procurement reports. Would we be reporting at another time?
So we're open certainly to suggestions to other forms of reporting. The thought was that we would not report out and instead just leave it to the websites purchasingconnection.ca and lethbridge.bidsandtenders.ca.
Okay, so we're not adjusting the time frame here. We're just simply eliminating it and saying it's available if you need it.
Correct, yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further questions in the queue. Thank you very much, Mr. Kaysor, for answering those questions, for my colleagues for the questions that were asked. And I will read the resolution from Councillor Carlson, Procurement Summary, Reporting Harmonization. Be it resolved, the Economic and Finance Standing Policy Committee recommend that City Council endorse the harmonization of a monthly procurement summary reporting with the guidelines stipulated in the Canadian Free Trade Agreement, the CFTA. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the report and information being available to answer some questions. I do support this, streamline the process, saving staff time, I think is very important, and I appreciate it coming forward. It's another way we can try to make our community more affordable.
Question has been called. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you.
She's here. Are you?
In our package as well, there's a Lethbridge and District Exhibition monthly financial reporting. And we do have Mr. Gallucci is here to answer any questions that my colleagues may have regarding the Lethbridge and District Exhibition monthly financial reporting. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for Mr. Gallucci, if you wouldn't mind, and as you're stepping forward, I mean, I look at the report and we see some deficits that continue and we see some positive things that are happening. And I sort of look at this as a sports analogy, and this is a marathon where, I don't know, we're maybe mile 12 or something like that right now, and we have a ways to go. But I guess my question is, based on the information we have here, can you give us, is this a good news that we have here, or where are we at, and how should I feel about the report?
Councillor, that's a fair question, actually. Where are we in the continuum of this line? So to answer that question, it's a positive report. It's definitely, we're showing movement in the right direction. We believe that these are pretty conservative revenue estimates, and we are showing increases in our revenue, which we think we will continue to do. We're also trying to control our costs. So I would say that we are well on our way to starting to do something. It will take a little while, but these are very positive items, and goes back to Councillor Middleton Hope's last comment was, is there hope? And I would say there's some hope. And that's what this demonstrates, that we're moving in the right direction. We're making some good changes. We're landing some events that are really generating some good revenue. And we're really working on 25 now to further develop that. So I would say we're in a very positive place, but we have a lot of work to do still.
As you look forward, what is going to be the next real crucial statement that you're going to bring forward, like October-ish, or what's going to give us more of a story?
Yeah, October will be a good one in the sense that we'll have July and August under wraps, and at that point we will have whoop-up days and a few other things under our belt. And it'll really indicate where we are with those revenues. And then we have a pretty strong back half of the year as we roll into October 31st, which is Lethbridge and District's exhibition's fiscal year end. So the October report will bring us pretty close to where we are for that part of it, and then into that review in November.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Next I have Councillor Middleton.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Three questions, Mr. Gallucci, and thank you for coming forward this morning, or this afternoon, I guess it is. Item number one, expenses are up. Can you explain how, to those that are not familiar, how this is protracted out over the course of a year? So we're going to recoup some of that loss by August and September and October. So it looks like expenses are up, and however, we know that you're paying for things that are coming up in the future. Can you just sort of explain that a little bit?
Yes, through the worship to Councilman Mope, we are incurring some expenses. We'll have wages that are ongoing, utilities. These will just continue to roll in. We are generating revenues, just not as much revenue to offset those expenses monthly, but we will have some larger periods where all the revenue will roll in. Like in August, we'll see a substantial increase in revenue. September, we'll see a substantial increase. So this is probably the toughest time right here with the lowest number of events during this period. It's not unusual in the event industry. June is typically a tougher month, May also, but then as you get into July, August, September, it really improves. And then that last quarter is usually very strong, the October through December.
Ramps up. So yeah, we're paying for, in advance of some of the activities that we're going to be hosting in the next several months.
Yes, and some of those wages, like they're building up the partnerships. Partnership group it's great. We've moved the needle from 600,000 in revenue to, we estimate it'd be around closer to 800,000 revenue. So while we're paying these wages, we're also generating revenue that will be realized as those contracts come due, as we start the new contracts. Same thing with our events. We increased 20 events in 2024 this year, 5 quite substantial ones actually in 2020. Or in 2024-20, but 5 quite substantial large ones in 2025. And we're continuing to grow that. So while we are spending money, we're spending money to make money too.
And that would have been my third question, but I do want to preempt Councillor Carlson, who will ask this question without doubt. Are we detracting from other venues in the city to fill the exhibition?
Our goal is to go after large events. Predominantly, that's what we have done. We are targeting 500 plus large trade show events that need trade space, because that really is unique to that location and facility. And some where there's combinations of meetings, conventions, they need large breakouts that can't be facilitated in other places. Do we book weddings and things like that? We book them if people walk in and want to book them, but we don't go after that business. We don't solicit it. Our target is the large events, but we won't turn someone away if they walk in and really want a space.
Okay, Excellent. Last component is on sponsorship, your flagship. Can you explain where we are with sponsorship, how that's working? Are we identifying increases in sponsorship for the exhibition?
We are. We have a substantial, actually, that's where that partnership, was sponsorship.
Yeah, okay.
So we've moved the needle from 600 to 800,000. That's through events and through the facility. We have another inventory of about 200,000 that we could gain over the next year. And those guys are continuing to grow some of the event sponsorships that are coming. As well, we have some facility, a couple of names left, plus the naming of the building opportunity, which is a little bit, large. It takes a little longer to secure, but they're really coming along, and I'd say we're in a good place and continuing forward.
Can I ask you the last question? Is there hope?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to touch on that as well. One of the questions that Councillor Middleton Hope had mentioned is that you don't go out to these smaller events that do want to have plans of being out at the exhibition. It's a beautiful building, and I mean, if you get up in some of the rooms, it's great to be able to see. Although you don't go out and actively pursue them, as you mentioned, if they come in, you're not turning them away, meaning that they're shopping about, but the main reason that that center is there and the reason why you're going out chasing down businesses for those that are 500 and greater that cannot be held anywhere else in our community. Is that fair to say?
That is correct. Our salespeople are targeting, and we've identified that the convention business is number one. It generates the most profitability. Trade events are number two. Number three would be our special events. There are more self-created, like the Ag Expo. And then we move into some other events that are like, and we're working on those now, potentially, what could we do for sport? Could we hold a pickleball tournament? Could we do, and then some other areas in that. We do have our banquets and meetings, but again, we look at those for more people who need multiple breakout spaces and a larger space where it's 450 and that and going along. So our salespeople that is their focus and their target.
Right. Thank you for that. Councillor Palladino.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Gallucci. I love saying that name. I do. You talk about construction in your report here that is almost complete, and I know it's 99.9% complete. But I spotted this $91,000 change order, and I thought it was just one, but it's multiple change orders, I guess. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's roughly about 9 change orders. We have about there are just a number of things that needed to be completed, and they were earlier. Most of them are waiting on equipment or hardware or those types of things. It's surprised doorknobs.
Okay, hardware.
Specifically to fit our doors are hard to come by, so things like that.
At first, I thought it was one $91,000 change order. I thought that was a little steep. But
yeah, so it would be it's the equivalent of 10.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Why the doorknobs?
Doorknobs, yeah.
That's a big door.
So I was just going to say that once you enter a room, you can't leave then? Is that the idea? Unless it's a revolving door until you get said doorknobs. No, I'm just giving you enough time, Mr. Gallucci. And yes, that is a great name to be able to say for sure. All right, Councillor Parker.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Gallucci, for the report. We've had 3 big shows there. We've had the RV show, we've had Ag Expo, and we've had the Home and Garden Trade Show, and people are very happy with the facility overall. But one thing that people say is food service is actually brutal. There's no food to eat in there. There's nowhere to even get food. There's no they can't even get a chicken fingers and fries or something like that. These are what people say, and so but that's a revenue source, obviously, and so can you explain what's going on there?
Members of council, I think we could elaborate on this, and I will speak as the city board chair for the exhibition, but we would probably want to go in camera due to the sense of nature of the contract situation.
Thank you. I'll have to ask it. Yep.
We could, I can comment on one of them.
Well, you can include the questions, so we can go into the other part after. That's what I would say. Sure.
Okay.
All right, so where are we at? Are we going?
If we could go in camera, that would be great.
As well.
Just in case there's some further questions.
All right. Could we finish, first of all, this resolution? Because I do want to ask if there's anyone, and I was remiss, I did not, ask if there's anyone had anything to speak to regarding the purchasing procurement summary reporting. So I'll ask if there's anybody in the audience. I know, Mr. Lear, if you want to speak to anything else on the agenda, and my apologies for not asking on the previous one regarding the procurement summary reporting harmonization, and also this one prior to us going in closed. And I'll also ask if there's anything from the Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU update. Is there anything that anybody in the gallery, I'm saying anyone in the gallery, but Mr. Lear, it looks like you're the one. Is there anything else to add to what we have so far? Thank you, Mr. Gallucci. And my apologies for not asking earlier on another one. I just slips my mind.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just do want to make it clear that I don't envy you guys. I think you got a very challenging position. Just so you know where I'm coming from, somebody needs to advocate for taxpayers. And so I'm sorry if I hurt your feelers, but somebody's got to hold your feet to the fire. And since we don't have, again, a loyal opposition, if you will, I guess I'm stuck with it. So anyway, I'm not looking to get into politics. Got my taste of that, got cured. So anyway, just please do your best, but bear in mind, let's never take our eyes off the ball.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I appreciate that, Mr. Lear, and he said someone needs to look and be that watchdog, and I'm hoping we as council, that's our role, and that's what we do with our administration, but I do appreciate you coming forward and for the comments. I know you're engaged, I know you're passionate about making sure that the taxation is kept in par, and I do appreciate you coming in and sharing your ideas, and coming from here, the questions we have, please don't take them personal as just responses to questions that you have. And I know you've got some pretty broad shoulders. We've chatted in the past. So thank you very much for bringing forward what you have so far today. And with that, I'll have a motion to go in closed.
I have one that's in public, so. If that's okay.
So do you want, should we move to 6.5 and then go closed? I'm sorry, I didn't. It's kind of they're kind of somewhat close. And I know that there's nothing that, it's not a presentation, but then we can actually finish up. Is yours on 6.4, Councillor Carlson?
I just have questions for Mr. Gallucci.
Public ones? Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Gallucci. All right.
Am I doing it right, Nick?
Sure. Yeah.
Gallucci. Palladino. And thank you, Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple questions further to Councillor Middleton Hope and Mayor Higgins on the competitiveness. I really appreciate that we're not trying to poach or push ourselves ahead of the private sector there, because that was one of the complaints I heard about the previous iteration. How are our rates comparatively? Because it's one of the questions I get all the time, that if it's a municipally funded building, it shouldn't undercut the rates. So if people want to rent a wedding there, or we're competitive, we're not undercutting, correct? I just need that information out there because I hear it all the time.
To Councillor Carlson, that is correct. We are, our rates are high.
Yes.
Now, we have lowered them somewhat recently because in comparison to Edmonton and Calgary, but yeah, we're not cheap.
Excellent. And I have heard that from people who've tried to rent there or have even rented there, but you get what you pay for. It's a gorgeous place. I just want to make sure we're not undercutting using municipal tax dollars to do so. So that's all.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that because we did lower our rates a little bit to accommodate some of the people, but it really was in the trade area mostly, and that is just people were struggling that how are we at the same as Edmonton or Calgary per square foot, and and we have adjusted those, but as far as the rest goes, we have held the line pretty firm.
That is excellent. And right now, what is the projected deficit at the end of the year? Because when we were originally talking exhibition, it was 6.5. And I'm seeing that there's some good news in here. I think that was Councillor Campbell's, sorry, Acting Mayor Campbell's question was, is this good? How should I feel about this? I'm feeling somewhat better. I think we've saved 1.6 in a forecast.
Yes, we are estimating we'll be in a deficit of 4.6 million, which is roughly 1.8 million better than we anticipated earlier. And that is has a little preview with that as long as our revenue projections hold. Okay. But again, I think we're in a good place, that our revenue projections, we're not leaping out there. They're conservative, and we see still more bookings for 2024. Some of our focus will shift here in June or in July to 2025, but because we really have to add a series to that year, and that naturally will happen anyway, as there's a booking period before the actual event. But we see revenues continuing and holding and getting better.
And as you said, in October, you're hoping to come and tell me it's less than $1 we owe, correct? No, I would love that, but I appreciate that the number is going down. So thank you.
I do have another question, and I know I've received calls, and I'm sure I know Mr. City Manager has as well, as he is. We have spoke about this before, and I think it's important that we actually do bring this to in a public setting regarding staffing there, and are they city employees, etc. And Mr. City Manager, are you okay to speak to that, or is that Mr. Gallucci, or could you or your designate touch base on that for the community?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, I will start, and I know Mr. Gallucci's prepared. He actually attached an item to the agenda for this purpose, and you're exactly correct. So as city manager and city co-chair of the exhibition board, had those questions raised to me, and I think it's important to have that publicly asked and answered, so I'll turn it over to Mr. Gallucci.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So in our process of hiring, we do identify ourselves as Lethbridge and District Exhibition. In every interview, there's 2 or 3 of us, and how every interview starts is identifying the Lethbridge and District Exhibition and who they are and what they are. It then moves into specifically who they would be working for, and outlines the greater philosophy of what's going on, and then it moves into the specific position to that role. Again, identifying LDE and how that role works. We have attached a contract, so once a letter offer goes out and it's accepted, we then issue a contract, and the contract is pretty clear who you work for. It's 14 pages, and it clearly identifies you work for Lethbridge and District Exhibition, that you are not a city employee, and I don't believe anyone could even think that they could be considered that, given the process that they go through.
Thank you. It's important to know, and because I still received, they're not flooding, but 4 or 5 questions about that, and that the city is hiring all of these folks for Lethbridge and District Exhibition, and I just wanted to make sure that I had that answer from Mr. City Manager and yourself, as I know it's attached to the agenda, but it's important to speak that in public. So I do appreciate that answer. I do have one more question, Councillor Carlson.
It was a question in some of your internet upgrades, and it talks about e-sport, it talks about internet intensive things like gaming. Can you tell me what you mean by gaming? Is it like video games, or is it?
Yes, Councillor Carlson, it is exactly that. We made a significant change in our hardware that now allows us to go after and target pretty much any E type of conference. Gaming is especially draws heavy, we need high bandwidth, we need to expand it. We don't need it all the time, so the way it's structured is we can expand and contract it as we need, and it allows us to go after a unique set of conferences and events that otherwise we couldn't.
Okay. I was just wondering, it didn't mean we were looking at putting a casino in there.
No, that's not our intention. No.
No, but to that point, Councillor Carlson, I know we attended an event there, and my goodness, if anyone had the opportunity of the e-sport, Councillor Palladino, a few of that out there, and we're talking thousands of folks that are here gaming, and of course the infrastructure there. It doesn't matter. I know that there was comments there that, my goodness, this was since there's a new board. This is why this failed. And I'd spoken with Mr. Galucci while I was over there. It doesn't matter who would have been there. The tax on that system of gamers and this 4K video and everybody's playing these games was just overbearing. But the team it took about an hour and that was it, and got it back on track. But to be able to track that, like the esports is absolutely massive right now for gaming, and so it was great to be able to see that roll out and that event, because it's the first time I think we've ever had something of the sort. Correct?
Yeah.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you. No further questions. So with that, we will have a motion to go in closed. Councillor Carlson, all in favor? Yeah, we'll have to come back. Yeah, we'll come back. Thank you. With that, we'll take about 5 minutes and we'll be. We're going to move on to 6.4, just finishing up the resolution for 6.4 that has not been voted on. I do have a resolution.
We're adding the FOIP clause.
And we're adding something to it, so I'm going to give just a couple minutes. Oh, there we are. Look at that. All right, so what's added to the resolution that was in the package is further be resolved that Economic and Finance Standing Policy Committee direct that the closed meeting discussion with respect to the Lethbridge District Exhibition monthly financial reporting remain confidential pursuant to Section 17, harmful to personal privacy, 24, advice from officials, and 27, legal privilege of the Freedom of Information Protection of Privacy Act. Councillor Palladino.
That's the matter for you. I'm going to call for the question on this one.
Question to be called. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you.
Any one of us leaves the room and we lose quorum?
And we'll move on to Resolution 6.5, Lethbridge District Exhibition Memorandum of Understanding Update. And in the package, I'll read the resolution, ask for any questions, and debate. Be it resolved, the Economic and Finance Standing Policy Committee received for information the Lethbridge District Exhibition Memorandum of Understanding, MOU Update Report from Councillor Parker. Is there anything, Mr. Brierly, that you want to touch on this? Or I know it's all in the package. I just didn't know if there's anything you wanted to touch on. That's fine? Yep, that's all right. The question's been called. All in favor? And that does pass unanimously. And with that, we will go back in close. Can I have a motion for close? Councillor Carlson, all in favor? All right, I do have
You'll have
a
to read it.
resolution, 7.1, if we can get that on the screen.
It's just that one sentence, Tolman.
And that is a referral motion from Deputy Mayor Carlson. Be it resolved that item 7.1, land development matter, be forwarded to the July 9th closed meeting of council. All in favor? Thank you. And that is unanimous. Thank you. And I have a resolution from Councillor Parker, closed meeting land purchase number 1. Be it resolved, the Economic and Finance Standing Policy Committee recommend the City Council approve the land purchase of approximately 215.8 square feet of 618 6th Avenue South, as provided on the attached map from Rosemary Ann Robertson Shannon, with the following sales term. Purchase price of $3,000, closing date July 31st, 2024, and further be resolved, the Economic and Finance Standing Policy Committee directed the closed meeting discussion with respect to the land purchase number 1 remain confidential pursuant to Section 23 Local Public Body Confidences and 24 advice from officials of the Freedom of Information Protection and Privacy Act. Councillor Parker, question's been called. All in favor? That's it. Well, you threw me off there. I was looking for his voice coming from somewhere else. And land purchase number 2 from Acting Mayor Campbell. Be it resolved, the Economic Finance Standing Policy Committee recommend the City Council approve the land purchase of approximately 588.64 square feet of 410 Stafford Drive North, as provided on the attached map from ATCO Gas and Pipelines Limited, with the following terms. Purchase price $742, closing date August 23rd, 2024, and further be resolved that the Economic and Finance Standing Policy Committee directed the closed meeting discussion with respect to the land purchase number 2 remain confidential pursuant to Section 23 Local Public Body Confidences and 24 advice from officials of the Freedom of Information Protection and Privacy Act. Acting Mayor Campbell. Question's been called. All in favor? And we will move to anything, well, oh, I keep thinking council updates. We're in council. I just wanted to drag this out a little longer. With that, we are adjourned.